scientist who studied the data behind romantic relationships. We'll talk about whether dating someone across the political aisle can work and what it means if we only date people within our political silos. And we're hoping you'll have some questions, too. Do you think it's possible to find love with someone who sees politics differently? Is politics important to you when it comes to finding a partner? Tell us all about it. Call 651-227-6000 or 800-242-2828.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Rylan Barton. 3 commercial ships were struck around the Strait of Hormuz, setting one cargo ship on fire. More than a dozen vessels have come under attack around the strategic waterway since the war with Iran began a week and a half ago, which has brought shipping to a virtual standstill. NPR's Jackie Northam reports.
Maritime monitoring agencies say fire broke out in the engine room of a Thai-flagged cargo ship after it was struck off the coast of Oman. Iran has claimed responsibility. 2 other ships flying Greek and Japanese flags were also hit. U.S. Central Command says it attacked Iranian mine-laying vessels around the Strait of Hormuz, although it's unclear whether Iran has laid mines in the narrow waterway. Iran has warned vessels need permission to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Hundreds of oil tankers around the strait are idled because of the risk, sending the price of oil skyrocketing. President Trump promised to send naval escorts, but that hasn't happened yet. Jackie Northam, NPR News.
Ukraine has sent its security chief and military representatives to the Middle East to secure defense assistance in exchange for Ukrainian anti-drone expertise and supplies. NPR's Joanna Kakissis reports from Kyiv.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky told reporters that his country has the greatest experience in downing Iranian-designed Shahed attack drones. He said countries buying interceptor drones realize they cannot operate them without Ukraine's help. Ukraine uses cheap interceptor drones to hunt and destroy Shaheds, which Russian forces regularly lob at Ukrainian cities. Zelensky said in exchange for interceptor drones and expertise, Ukraine would like supplies for Patriot air defense systems, which destroy ballistic missiles. Joanna Kakissis, NPR News, Kyiv.
Meta, the owner of Facebook and Instagram, says it's cracking down on scammers. NPR's Shannon Bond reports the big tech company has been criticized for making money off the ads.
Meta says online scams are getting more sophisticated. They use AI to create convincing fake accounts and lure unsuspecting users into conversations. And they buy ads that sometimes impersonate celebrities or known brands. Meta says it recently took down 150,000 accounts connected to scam networks in Southeast Asia, which is a hub for organized scammers. Police in Thailand arrested 21 people involved in the scams. Meta says it's also working to increase the number of advertisers whose identity it verifies to reduce abuse. It says it wants 90% of ad revenue to come from verified advertisers by the end of the year, up from 70% now. Shannon Bond, NPR News.
The U.S. stock market remained relatively calm today, even as the price of oil climbed again. This is NPR News from Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include FJC, a foundation of donor-advised funds working to maximize the impact of charitable giving and to create customized philanthropic solutions. Learn more at fjc.org.
For NPR News in the Twin Cities, I'm Elena C. People with Parkinson's disease were at the Minnesota Capitol today to support a bipartisan effort to prevent and cure the disease. Kate Kelly has more.
Parkinson's disease is the world's fastest-growing neurological disorder. It's incurable and gets worse over time. Minnesota legislators want to ban the use of a pesticide linked to the disease and create a research trust fund. Lynn Johnson has had Parkinson's for 15 years and supports the bills.
One day I could run up the stairs. The next day I had to hold the railings or I was going to fall. One day I could talk and remember my words. The next day I couldn't. And every day you're losing something. And if we could prevent this so no one else has to keep losing, that's worth it.
The future of the bills is uncertain in the divided legislature. I'm Kate Kelly at the Capitol.
The average price of a gallon of gas ticked down about a half cent today, while the price of diesel continues to rise amid economic uncertainty caused by the war in the Middle East. The slight drop in gas prices in Minnesota to an average of about $3.25 a gallon still leaves prices up more than 40 cents a gallon since early last week and up more than 60 cents over the past month. 2 more rounds of snow are in the forecast for the state over the coming days. First up, what could be a significant storm later tomorrow into early Friday for parts of northern Minnesota. NPR meteorologist Sven Sungard says a mix of rain and snow will quickly turn to all snow.
Broad area of about 3 to 6 inches of snow tomorrow into tomorrow night for much of northern Minnesota into the Iron Range, War Road, Bemidji, Grand Rapids, International Falls to Duluth, and then the North Shore really getting walloped here. We're going to get lake enhancement. Some strong winds off of Lake Superior are going to push those totals up to 5 to 10 inches.
There's a blizzard warning for the North Shore late tomorrow. Southern Minnesota will likely see mostly rain showers and gusty winds from that system. A potentially larger winter storm is targeting the region for this weekend, but the exact track of that heavy snow isn't certain yet. This is NPR News.
This hour on NPR News is supported by Alight and Northwest Minnesota Foundation, organizations committed to the people and communities of Minnesota. Their support helps make space for respectful conversation, shared understanding, and connection at a moment when many are seeking clarity and perspective. Now, let's begin.
Good evening. I'm Catharine Richert. You're listening to NPR News. All of us have gone on a bad date at some point. Maybe they didn't stop talking about themselves. Maybe their table manners were terrible. Or maybe it was just their politics. For more and more people looking to partner, politics is becoming a deal maker or a deal breaker. And the data backs this up. According to an NPR PBS News Marist poll, a majority of Americans under 45 say it's important to date or marry someone who shares their political views. And this is particularly important for young people. 60% of Gen Z and young millennials say political harmony is essential to relationship harmony. So why is politics so important when you're looking for a partner? We'll hear from 2 experts who think about this question. They'll help us interpret the interactions between personal, political, and romantic beliefs. And listeners, I want you to join our conversation. Do you think it's possible to have a romantic partner with differing political views? Is politics important to you when it comes to finding love? Tell us all about it. Give us a call at 651-227-6000 or 800-242-2828. And if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook tonight, leave us a comment and we'll have our guests respond to it on the air. Now, let me introduce my guests. Alex Merritt is a Minneapolis-based dating coach known as the Love Engineer. Alex leads relationship workshops and does one-on-one advising on how to find love. Thanks for being here, Alex.
Thanks so much for having me.
And we have Rebecca Groen van Jolk. She is an expert in economics and the data behind romantic relationships. She has research experience in behavioral economics, sociology, and imperial psychology. You may know her work in Psychology Today or from her TED Talk on creating enduring love. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us.
So happy to be here.
Okay, I want to start this discussion with a really basic question, and that is, why is politics so important to dating these days? And when it comes to finding romantic love, what are we actually learning about a person when we learn their political affiliation? Alex, I'll start with you.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more important, and I think it's always been. The difference is just how it shows up. I liken it to. It depends on what politics means to you, right? For some people, politics are just it's a preference, right? It's kind of like paint in a house. For others, it may be like the windows, right? Those are things you can negotiate around. For others, politics and what the policies are like the roof. They tie their values, are connected to there. And then for still some, it's existential. It's like the foundation in a home. And so they mean just different things to different people. And now as politics comes up, people want to understand how someone holds them.
Right. And Rebecca, what about you? Why do you think it's become so important to people as they're dating and finding romantic love?
What we observe in the data is something we call assortative matching. So people that stay together long term are similar on a variety of traits. Some easily observable ones like height, weight, education, but also subtler ones like the values, even a sense of humor, and also politics. So a lot of partners, that end up choose each other also and are very similar to one another, including on politics. And this initial sorting is stronger than partners growing together, but that also happens. And this assortative matching has become stronger over the past 50 years, but in everything, right? 50 years ago and earlier, couples were more like opposites attract. It has to do with technical progress. It has to do with, in order to survive, you had to really divide your tasks. Whereas over time, couples could spend more leisure together. And as they spent more leisure together, all these things became very important. What I like, what I dislike, what my hobbies are, what my values are, including politics. So that's one reason why over time this has become stronger. You can add to that since 1990, things have become positively polarized, but possibly we will talk about that later too.
Yeah, I mean, Rebecca, that is so interesting to me. I think what I hear you saying is that, 50 plus years ago, couples were making maybe more practical decisions. Like, your strength is this, my strength is this. So, we might be different, but there's a good reason for us to couple up. But you're saying that as people have been able to actually spend more time together because of technological advances, we really want someone who we are super comfortable with and can laugh with. And also, when we talk about politics, we're kind of talking about values too, right?
Yeah.
And I think for some, that's exactly right. Where it's it's always been there, it's been important, but it back 50 years beyond, there were other focuses, and so people didn't spend a whole lot of time with it. I say all the time, it's kind of like if there's a hole in your roof, the rain does not put the hole there; it just reveals it. And so that's what politics are now. Now people have more time to explore things that might not have been pressing. In relationships before, because now people want hey, is this important, or is this a values decision versus it's just mildly something that's interesting to someone.
Yeah. Now, Rebecca, you've written about this widening gap between men and women and their political ideologies. Why is this divide growing right now?
We've seen that a lot since the early 1990s, that women and men drift apart politically. And it has to do fundamentally with the media landscape, right? In the early 1990s, we all started moving online progressively, right? Email came up and then online news. And that's an entirely different animal from your grandfather's newspaper, which was probably shared around the family. It was a communal good. Online, we're normally alone. We consume news alone. We read what we want to read. And these are interfaces that work differently. They work with algorithms that are meant to keep you hooked. And Mara Einstein, in her book Hoodwinked, has shown very nicely, citing a variety of research, that one way to keep us hooked is to show us progressively extreme content that stirs us, that possibly enrages us. So you may start on a relatively, intermediate or median voter perspective when you go online, but maybe slightly off-center, slightly, liberal, slightly conservative, but you're provoked to explore more and more extreme content. And also we drift into curated social universes that are increasingly then different for men and women. And we have our priors reinforced in these universes. A friend of mine, Alice Evans from King's College London and now at Stanford, she also writes a lot about this and has explored it in depth across the globe. So this drifting apart of men and women we see in the US, UK, Germany, but also Turkey and South Korea. And also John Byrne Murdoch from the FT, he looked at all the social surveys where people self-report their views, and he also documented that very clearly. Since the early 1990s, there we have this gap emerging. And the most likely culprit really is this, we have our bubble reinforced online. And it's so happened that people who are like just slightly apart drift more and more apart in separate social universes.
Now, I want to go back to the internet because I feel like it's hard to have this conversation without talking about the internet and apps. But Alex, before we do, how are you seeing this just play out in your coaching? I mean, you've been doing this for some time. Are you seeing these gaps widen just in the conversations you're having with people?
Indeed, and I think like I said, it goes back to what one holds or how one holds, politics. And what I see is that for men, for many of the changes, it is, they're debating policy, if you will, whereas for women with some of the changes and things that are changing in the political landscape, they are defending their existence in some cases. And so even when you think about some of the major things that have happened politically, whether it's the Roe v. Wade thing, for many men, it's like, that's interesting, but their day-to-day world didn't change or is not affected. Whereas for many women who at one point had certain freedoms because of this legislation, have different freedoms. And so for many women, what I'm hearing is that because safety and security is important for everybody in relationships, men and women, it's just now that when they're talking to a partner who they realize holds different views about something they find value, which is, whether it's bodily autonomy, whatever it is, now they don't feel safe psychologically with their partner, whereas before it might have been unknown.
Yeah, politics feels really personal these days, kind of across the board. I think we can agree on that. We are talking about dating tonight, and specifically whether it's possible to date someone who sees politics differently than you do in a very politically divided country. I have two experts with me who can talk about this. They think about it a lot. We want to know, have you dated or married your political opposite? What has been your experience? And if you're looking for a romantic partner, how important is politics to you? Call us at 651-227-6000 or 800-242-2828. And just a reminder, you can watch us on YouTube and Facebook right now. You can drop a comment and we will have our guests respond to it on the air. I want to go now to Kelly in Minneapolis. Kelly, what do you want to share with us?
Yeah, I'm sorry if some of this is redundant just because I've been listening in and some of the points that I wanted to make have already been said. But
please make them anyway.
Okay, great. I'm a mid-30s heterosexual woman, date heterosexual men mainly. And I found, especially during, the ICE activity in the last few months, it's become really prevalent to me about empathy. I mean, it's a sign of empathy in men if I can see that they care about what's going on and what was being recently said about, their people's rights being taken away. And there's demographics of people who don't have to worry day to day if their safety, their health care are going to be taken away from them, if they can leave their houses, without thinking of being picked up by ICE. So I had an experience during the ICE when ICE activity was really prevalent, like in mid-January, where I was seeing someone and, people were murdered, and it was very upsetting. And it was kind of the first time I shared my feelings. And I was told by this person that they didn't like to talk about politics. And I immediately ended it because it was like, how can you not care about this right now? And also that's a sign of me trying to share my feelings as just a person and being shut down. So in this instance, politics and emotional availability and validation went hand in hand, and I find it does a lot these days. So I'm just kind of running into that problem a lot, dating, and so I don't put a lot of effort into it anymore, to be honest.
Kelly, I think what you said there is really interesting, which is that political values are connected to how empathetic someone seems to you, which is, I think that's a really important quality in someone. I mean, Alex, when you hear Kelly's story, how does this resonate with you? Is this something you're running into?
Absolutely. And so what I hear Kelly saying is that empathy is of value to her in one of the ways. It's the care, to your point, around what's happening. And so then when you encounter a partner, and that's the piece where it's like values is, again, like the roof on a house. It is hard to deal with a roof that's different. Whereas for the gentleman she's talking about, it sounds like, again, politics is like paint to him, right? You can negotiate and compromise on paint colors, and it's fine either way. But it is a different experience in a home if like I said, if the roof has a hole in it, and so that's what she's experiencing. Right. Her experience in that relationship is different because what she values and how she holds it, and how she holds her partner's reaction to it says that this isn't safe or secure for me.
Yeah. I mentioned at the top of this show this polling that suggests that Gen Z and younger millennials, like our caller here, Kelly, who said she's like in her 30s, are particularly concerned with politics as a thing they're on the lookout for when they're evaluating a partner. I mean, how do you explain that trend, Rebecca? It seems very important to young people in particular right now.
Yeah, it is. It becomes more and more a question of identity. And as I heard Kelly say, it's very linked to empathy. I would say values for dating are incredibly important, and they should drive, of course, your decision and your intentionality. And it's regrettable if that leads to safe spaces disappearing, safe spaces for discussion, for exchange, for different opinions. And so I would say it's fundamentally important to keep the conversation going, including the conversation across the aisle with different opinions, and to maintain this openness. And so refusing that at the beginning of a relationship is something with a big question mark. Why is it in Gen Z? We see this drift. So it has to do, I would say, with the drift we've seen since the early 1990s that, we have our priors reinforced. We are online so much more. When you're online, you're alone. You're not interacting socially anymore. You're not meeting, the other gender. You're not meeting other people. The exchange also breaks down a little bit. And then there is a risk that sort of political boundaries get reinforced in a way that's actually not that helpful. So it's completely understandable to say, okay, at this point, I won't date somebody who thinks XYZ or who chooses XYZ. But in a way, it's regrettable because then you end up segmenting the dating market. Then you're not really in even the friendship market, if you want. You're not interacting anymore. You're not conversing anymore. You're not sharing the information, and you're limiting yourself to a much smaller pool. And
that just reinforces the division, right? I mean, it's sort of this like vicious feedback loop. Yeah.
Yes,
and what's so interesting? Go ahead.
It can disempower in the long run. So one consequence is, let's say, as we said, women and men are drifting apart, most women more in the liberal direction, men in the conservative direction. So if women say, I won't ever date a conservative man, she will, like in heterosexual space, she'll have fewer men to choose from. And it changes the power dynamics in the dating market, right? You have 10 women queuing up for one liberal man. And that really changes who has, more power the longer leave in the dating market. And it's not ideal. Mostly, in terms of numbers, we are gender balanced. And it would be great if we kept the conversation going and also questioned our priors every now and then. And I understand it can be hard if people refuse to do that on day one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
Alex, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, it's like one of the things that can change, which is the beautiful part of what has happened over the last 50 years or so with dating, is that now you have choices. And I do think when we talk about relationships, and as pointed out before, it was like it used to be like opposites attract. The truth is like attracts like. And if you're talking about building something long term, and things of that sort, identifying like values, understanding things that is important, because otherwise you can get into a relationship with people that are different, but either one person has to be quiet about how they truly feel, and so then you end up with not being secure in that regard, or you have to ignore a whole aspect that's important to you. So I think holding out for compatibility and connection in the long term is value added, because if not, then you end up as I like to call it, miserably married, which so many people do because they've pretended differently than reality and then never feel safe in the relationship. So I do think it's important.
Right. So finding someone that you just feel safe with being yourself across the board, even if you have wildly different views about things, is kind of that's the secret sauce right there, Alex.
Correct. As long as and so being able, because you can have different views, and I think that's the piece. So I'm not even saying that you can't date across the political, but the safety and security in that relationship, again, that needs to be clear. And so, because like I said, if one person's debating an idea and you're debating against, again, your right to exist, that's a different thing, and it needs to be clear up front.
Yeah. We have Jane in St. Paul with us. Jane, what do you want to share?
I just recently remarried about 3 years ago. I married somebody on the opposite side of my political ideas, but basically he's a Republican. I'm a very staunch Democrat, and no one intends on changing the other. But I think it's really important because when you look at traditional families right now, most everyone encounters family members that are very opposite on the, politically within their own family. And you have to deal with that in your family. It doesn't mean that my husband and I don't have conflict about our beliefs, our political beliefs, but and it's quite interesting listening to the other side of the game. And opening up a little bit about what another person believes. And I think that, but as long as you have a foundation and as long as you have a trust in the relationship, you have a foundation, you have somebody that is going to, stick by you, all of those basic things, I just find that too many people close themselves off. And
right. So it sounds like you and your
in.
Yeah. You and your partner, Jane, it sounds like you two have some curiosity, right? Like, it's almost like, wow, like, I mean, do you have conversations where you're like, oh gosh, like, why do you think that?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, we've gotten into heated discussions, but it's never going to be, it's never about changing the other person. I can scream and yell at the TV or God knows what. And I'm heavily involved in different things having to do with the Democratic Party. But you know what? In the end, it's conversations, it's arguments, but it's not. It doesn't change the foundation of the relationship.
Yeah.
And it's
Jane, thank you so much.
To just stick with a side. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, no, thank you. You raise a lot of good points, and I'm happy that you've found someone. Alex, when you hear a story like Jane's, what stands out to you, especially if you are, helping someone maybe be flexible in who they are choosing to see, even if there isn't that perfect alignment?
Yeah, and so Jane just reinforced the idea like politics for her, it sounds like, and her husband are perspectives, right? They both bring different perspectives, and that is that is exactly where curiosity lives. Because again, how many windows you have, what direction they face, that can be compromised on, that can be negotiated, and so there is this curiosity, like, what do you see when I look out your perspective? What do I see? And there is no risk or no concern to each other because, as Jane pointed out, her foundation is really solid, and that is the key for any healthy relationship, is ensuring that foundational elements for you are in place, because the rest of it you can manage around long as your foundation is stable. She talked about trust and things of that sort. And the fact that they even have strong communication, because it's even to be able to argue and to conflict against ideas requires there to be strong communication, which is a really important element of any foundation.
It's just important across the board. Yeah, exactly. And she also brought up this idea of, the risks you face if you aren't open-minded about where your partner might be coming from. And Rebecca, this reminds me of something that you said in your TED Talk, which is who you meet is more important than what you want. Can you explain a little bit more about what you meant by that and why it is important, maybe just for society in general, to not go into dating with just this very narrow list of things that you are looking for?
Yeah, they have found from speed dating experiments, like speed dating generates a lot of data, right? Because a sizable group of people meets a couple of times and you can see how they behave and what they choose. And from this data, researchers from Essex University have found that the people tend to adjust their preferences to their opportunities. So they might prefer somebody who does not smoke, who has a certain height, a certain education. But if that's not available in the pool they're dating right there, it's speed dating, they're willing to adjust. There are few preferences around age are a bit more stable, but principally all other preferences are adjustable to our environment. So if you have some values, so my conclusion would rather be if you have some values you hold really, really dear and you really want to maximize in your life and support, you need to very consciously choose your environments. You need to consciously hang out in spaces where the people are with those values, so you bump into them. Because if not, the frequency of encounters, also for friendships, for romantic love, but also for friendships, the frequency of encounters, who you bump into, really has a bigger influence on your decision very often than your personal preference list.
That is
So if
so
your
good.
preferences are dear to you, you need to decide on them first and then maybe choose the environment. But if I can comment quickly on the caller.
Sure.
I found it very interesting that they have a marriage across the aisle. And I wanted to say romantic love has been a very powerful force historically, empirically. Papers have been written on this. So once marriage was no longer, an economical model or decided upon by extended family, but really a romantic individual free choice, we see a lot of altruism in couples, right? There is genuine altruism and we can prove it. Like you want the best for the other person. And clearly in this couple, you can see that they affirm the difference of the other person, even if they disagree, right? And so, romantic love can do that. It really can cut through social differences and other things more powerfully than many other things.
Alex, you wanted to jump in there. What did you hear there that resonated with you?
Oh yeah, no. So Rebecca's point is really solid in the sense of that you can give form, but like I said, but it reinforced for me where it's like it depends on where you hold it, but more than that, spending time in the environments that allow you to meet those individuals, especially like I said, if you have preference for red things and hanging out in spot that produce those is probably going to be more important for you. Then that's why I love her point around that. But choosing the environment if something's really important to you.
Yeah. We're talking about dating tonight, and specifically we are talking about dating people who you are not politically aligned with. Are you someone who has dated or married your political opposite? We want to know what your experience has been like. And if you are looking for a romantic partner, how important is politics to you? Give us a call, 651-227-6000 or 800-242-2828. And if you're watching us on YouTube or on Facebook, you can leave us a comment and we will have our guests respond to it on the air. I want to go back to this idea of your values and dating in the spaces that, reflect those values back to you. Alex, so much of dating is done online. I am going to date myself here and just say that I'm old enough to not have actually ever done that, but I hear about it from friends. And I know there are filters you can, in a lot of these apps, like one of the things you can fill out is political affiliation. You can filter by political affiliation. And I understand that probably makes it more efficient. But do you think that it is like kind of getting back to what Rebecca said with, you want to, you'll adapt to the environment in terms of what you're looking for in a person. Is it creating a situation where you're really limiting the number of people you would date because you aren't like bonding over running or like rock climbing first, right? You're sort of writing people off based on just politics before you actually get to know all the other things that make them a human being.
Yeah, possibly. What I would say, having done online for sure, is that it also allows you to be selective, because the truth of the matter is that like now we have online and you can filter. But before, when it was just community, so you had a different filter, right? So we've always had this ability to filter in it. And I tell people, like, this is not about quantity, which is the unfortunate part that sometimes online dating creates. It creates this idea of endless options, and that can be limiting for dating. So being able to narrow down, what you're interested in, and online profiles give you a really good way. Yes, it may be limiting, but again, the goal usually, or it should not be, to date everybody that's available. The reality is because the clearer you are about what you want and who you are, the more likely it is to identify that in another versus the scan, catch all of them and throw back the ones that you don't. It's like you can start by not spending that kind of energy. So I think it's actually helpful.
Yeah. We have a commenter on Facebook right now who says, I can't consider dating someone that doesn't believe in my fundamental rights, and that it seems there are too many conservative men today. I mean, that certainly gets back to what we were talking about earlier around, like political decisions feeling very personal right now. And if it's not something that affects you, it's hard to have empathy or connection around it. But Rebecca, we also are seeing that conservatism is attracting more men these days, while liberalism is attracting more women. I mean, what do you make of this trend, and how deep is that divide?
It's deepening, which is a bit worrisome, right? It's deepening over time. And I do think it goes back to us consuming most news, most media now online in our own universe, alone, confirming our priors. And also, it's so much less curated than, say, the old paper media landscape. What a newspaper prints, they're responsible for. They can be held accountable. They can be sued. There are a lot of information producers online that are not regulated and that speak as if with authority, and they're not covering their tracks empirically. They're not held accountable. And so just in that universe, views can become much more extreme and much more polarized. And I wanted to come back to a point that Alex made, and I think that's super important, the value of community. She said that we had filters in community earlier on. And I really believe in the power of community, and it can be shown as well. So when we're online, we're alone, we're not interacting, we are just basically fundamentally reinforcing our views. When we're in community, when we're with real people, we have checks and balances. We get feedback on what we're doing. We can find compromise. It's a very different world. And it's one that we now need to seek intentionally. And it's one of the antidotes, hopefully, to this polarization. And yes, it is worrisome. And if dating may be very hard and increasingly hard across this divide, but hopefully friendship is not. I would really encourage people to reach out even to people who hold views that are very hard to digest, just for the conversation, just for the exchange, just to rock someone else's priors.
That's a really good point, Rebecca. So that takes me back to a point where it's like dating for discovery, not as destiny, right? So many people are trying to figure out, like, is this the person? It's like irrelevant. It's like, do I want to be friends with them? And so, Rebecca, that's a really good point. It's like if we go at it as discovery versus trying to lock in a destiny, then I think it opens up so much more conversation. That's with people who may be of different political backgrounds as well.
And I've done a lot of reporting actually on political polarization over the last few years. And one thing I actually think we don't it's been eye-opening. And one thing I think we don't talk about enough when it comes to polarization, and I think is relevant to this conversation, is how our peer groups react when we hold a view that might not be quite in line with what the collective peer group believes, right? If we are siloing ourselves, we might have a view that doesn't quite fit the mold, or might make some people feel a little uncomfortable, and you can sort of be ostracized within your own group. And Alex, I mean, does this play into dating choices as well? Like, what if someone meets someone they're conservative, they meet someone who's really liberal, but it's like, God, can I introduce them to my friends? How is that going to work?
Absolutely, right? So we're, human beings are creatures who want to belong. That is, acceptance, community, that is a part of our humanity. And so anything that potentially threatens you being kicked out of the tribe, if you will, it does raise some flags, especially if you don't have other sources, if you will, to be able to have community. So that does come up, like how one's friends going to see about that. Can they go to the work function? Can they be around, can they come to dinner at Granny's house?
Can they talk politics at Thanksgiving?
Can they talk politics at Thanksgiving, or will they talk politics at Thanksgiving?
Yeah, right.
And how will that reflect on me?
Yeah, totally. If you're just joining our conversation, we are talking about dating across political divides tonight in a very politically divided country. We have two experts who think about this question, can give you some advice. We want to know if you have dated or married your political opposite. We want to know what your experience has been. And if you are looking for a romantic partner right now, is politics really important to you? You can call us at 651-227-6000 or 800-242-2828. We'll also remind our audience that this is being streamed on YouTube and Facebook. You can drop a comment there, and we will have our guests respond to it on the air. We have Connor in West St. Paul with us. Connor, what do you want to share?
Yeah, hi. I'm kind of outside of what you expected, or we're asking for. I date with inside my own ideological group. But I guess I just had a question for people that are stressing that fact or opinion. Expecting women, especially nowadays with how older men outside of the millennial group and younger men also outside of that millennial group are becoming more further from liberal or leftist ideology. Why you would want them to deny their own humanity, so to speak, when it comes to voting rights or bodily autonomy, why that should be taken off the chopping block and I guess more or less disregarded when dating nowadays, especially even more so with the younger generation, seems to be more and more disregarding of what women value nowadays. Like my own wife is a liberal. I'm more further on the left side than that, but I think that throwing that away doesn't seem to be respecting one's own humanity for the sake of, I guess, I don't know, really, it seems more of a male issue than a woman's issue. Nowadays, if they can't, I think get in line with what they want.
Connor, I think too, we've been talking about this, right? It's some issues, some political issues feel very personal. I would suggest trans rights and gay rights also would fit into that bucket as well. But you bring up bodily autonomy, that sort of thing. I mean, abortion prevention is a huge issue for conservatives and kind of always has been. I mean, it's very core to who they are. Alex, I think I want to talk a little bit about how you might advise someone who is in a cross-political relationship about, sticking with your values in spite of that, right? Because like the caller before said, we're not going to change each other's minds, right? So how do you advise people to be empathetic listeners, to be curious about their partner, while also maintaining who they are and what their values are?
Yeah, I think that's the key is being committed to that. It's like I am committed to my values. I'm committed to the foundational things that make me me, and being okay with that. It's also recognizing that if it is a foundational element for you, if it is a structural challenge for you, then depending on where that of your partner is, that can feel destabilized. So it becomes a question of at least sharing with them your where you're coming from, how you hold it. Because, like I said, for some people, it is they don't see what the big deal is because your partner it's not a big deal for them, and so being open, it's like, hey, would you be willing to hear this, or here's what I need from a support standpoint. And invite them to support there. It doesn't change the fact that they they view something differently. But if you can communicate your needs and how you feel about it versus just technically what it is, then invite your partner to be able to support you. Because many people, like I said, if you're in a healthy relationship, then your safety, your security is your partner's priority for sure. And sometimes the other person just doesn't know what it means to you. So being real and to be honest about that.
Alex, I also feel like we've been talking a lot about heterosexual relationships tonight in general. Are you seeing some of these same trends within same-sex marriages, partnerships, or is this sort of unique to those heterosexual relationships?
It's fascinating because, again, all the relationships, safety, security, support, those things are so it's the same across the board, is what I find. How it shows up may look a little different, but the foundational or the core element is similar. And so even in same gender loving relationships, feeling respected and supported becomes really, really key as well. And particularly sometimes more so as we think about politically what's changing and whose rights are being implicated by that.
We have Kayla on Facebook. I'm just going to read her comment here. She wrote, "At this point, I don't know how someone who is left-leaning can date someone who is conservative because, unfortunately, the ideologies are becoming attached to human rights and white supremacy." She also wrote, "How can you stick to your values when right now the Republican Party has dissolved any value of humanity outside of the tradition of white nuclear family?" That's kind of what we were just getting at there, Alex. I do want to go back to the survey that we were talking about earlier, because there was another data point in there that I thought was very interesting, and it was this. We talked about young people finding politics to be really essential to their romantic relationships. It also shared, this poll, that this preference starts to matter less and less as Americans age. Rebecca, why do you think that older people maybe aren't putting politics first in their relationship, or maybe just don't see it as quite as a flashpoint as some younger people might?
I'm not sure it's so much as people age, but at this snapshot, at this point in time, the older people haven't done the polarization, right? The trend we see over time has affected younger people for longer, so they are significantly more polarized. We have many more digital natives now, people who grew up online, right? So the trends we were discussing have affected them much more strongly. And that's one thing. The other thing is that the actual political landscape has also polarized. In decades ago, there was more a drift to the center. There was more an alignment across the globe and on different continents. You had more a drift towards the political center. Right now, we see polarization everywhere. So the actual landscape is polarized, and younger people have, to a larger share of their lives, grown up in this world. So in a way, it's natural it affects them more.
I think the one thing I'd also add for as a perspective why age may be showing up is because, again, if you're older and children are off the table, the decisions that are made about that don't affect you. For the younger generation, though, they are looking at this person is going to be the parent of my child, particularly. So I think that also is a factor, because certain people are not worried about child, no matter what type of relationship they're in, right? And so I think that's where age does show up a little bit, where it's like, you know what, I'm actually not concerned about abortion rights. I, may not be concerned about trans rights, whatever they may be. Just as you get a little older, whereas if you're younger, you're trying to establish what that's going to look like, and you don't want to fail at it.
Right, because you're bringing new people into the world, and it's hard to parent kids in the first place. Like, how much screen time should they get, right? So I can see what you're saying, right? You want to make sure that you are going to be parenting with someone who shares the same values as you, and if we're kind of equating values and politics here tonight, then I can see why it could create a lot of conflict in a marriage if your politics are really different and you're trying to guide your kids through the world in a cohesive and coherent way. I wanted to talk a little bit more about relationships in general. Alex, are you seeing men and women among, the younger crowds just maybe not coupling as much as they used to in general? I feel like I've seen headlines about this.
Yeah, there's a lot of, again, the idea of getting it right. So much pressure online, as Rebecca was pointing out. There's now everything is so visible, and so the pressure of it and the lack of skills, frankly, is another deal. So people don't feel equipped, which is why I think love engineering is important, because they're like, I don't know how to
go back
do
to that
relationships.
online thing,
Yeah.
like people sort of living online, maybe not having some of the social skills.
Can't do it. But so now you have the abundance of options and the lack of skills, and so now the supply, if you will, does not match. So now people are just overwhelmed, exhausted. Like, you know what? It's just easier to opt out, or they put a whole lot of pressure on getting it perfect, if you will. And social media suggests to you that there's always something better. And that is what this internet online dating culture does. It's like you're just one swipe away from something better, which is not the case. But it's the belief that online has created.
Rebecca, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, the pattern that men and women are drifting apart into different online worlds and then increasingly inhabiting different social universes is a thing, and it's a thing globally. There was a great article again by John Byrne Murdoch in the FT where he showed that basically in the Middle East, in North Africa, in the US, in the EU, in East Asia, in Latin America, we see this trend, and men and women are coupling up less and having less children, right? In all these countries. And it has to do with men and women drifting apart, but it also has to do with having different options in life, family being a huge responsibility also for young men in an insecure world, and some social safety nets breaking down. So there's a couple of factors that accumulate. But yeah, arguably it is this drifting apart where definitely the form of media we are consuming plays a big role. And yeah, and also what Alex mentioned, that this living in our own universe, there is also an erosion of social skills at some point. There is less interaction, and there is not the skill really to bridge the gap.
We're still taking your calls tonight. We're talking about dating across the political divide. We want to know if you've dated or married your political opposite. What has been your experience? And if you're looking for a partner, how important is politics to you? 651-227-6000 or 800-242-2828. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, you can also leave us a comment there. Rebecca, I want to go back to what you were just talking about. You mentioned countries that have typically, had a very patriarchal structure, right? Women bear children, they stay home, but there are more options now. So is this really a kind of a rebellion against the patriarchy in some of these countries? And maybe that's kind of what's happening here too.
Yeah, in some countries, women are, what the authors I talked about earlier they're culturally leapfrogging. They have access to also online to environments that are different, that give them more gender liberties, more female liberties, and they exploring possibilities and asking themselves, why should I not have this here at home? And men have no interest in following there, right? They're happy with the status quo sometimes. This is something that happens in Turkey, for example. And then they drift apart, and it's more difficult to bridge. In other countries, there were missing women, right, for a long time, meaning there was gender selective abortion in East Asia for a long time. So you have many men and few women. So those women have all the choice now. The society may be patriarchal and the norms may not be interesting to women, and they can opt out. They have the choice between many men, plus they can opt out, and that's happening, right? There's really women exploring and celebrating being single and not having children. And there's, of course, the technical progress in all these countries. Contraception works, and women have the choice also not to have children in relationships. So, and that partially that is behind some of the fertility trends we see.
Yeah, I mean, what do you foresee this? How do you foresee this playing out, Rebecca, in the longer term? Because that affects birth rates. It affects, really our societal structure.
It does. That's an interesting question. For now, most researchers observe the trends, comment the trends. Where do we go from here, right? I think to the extent that government, society, opinion shapers, journalists become aware of these trends, put them on the table, discuss them, and discuss solution. Hopefully, we find the conversation as a society, and we can unearth the issues that are there, and debate and see, what progress can we allow ourselves as a society to really make sure women and men meet again and can express their options. And it's different. For now, we're still in experimentation space. Different countries have tried different things to encourage fertility. Some things work, some things don't. But the big uncoupling has not been addressed yet anywhere.
Yeah. Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm passionate about love engineering and bringing logic to love, because for so often the way we have done relationships or even encouraged it was basically at the biology level, right? It was, babies need to be made. Somebody has to partner to do that. And then we go forward. Now what Rebecca is just sharing is that now that we have access to information, now women realize that they have more agency. And so now love engineering, I think, is going to be the support for us in learning how to love across the board, right? Men and women or same gender, doesn't matter. It's like, but having relationship skills is a different thing. Because I say all the time, love is unconditional. Relationships are not. And so now people are having to actually develop relational skills. And I think that's what's going to start happening more and more, is that because we do need each other, we do want to be in relationships despite all the data that's going on. We really do want to be in connection. So we will skill up. And I think necessity will breed the solution. And now we're starting to run into that, because now people will know it's like, oh, if I want to be in a relationship, I have to be a better partner. And therefore we'll have people becoming better partners is my enthusiastic hope as it relates to love engineering.
Yeah, go ahead, Rebecca. We just have a little time left here. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to say, I really believe in Alex's profession, and especially in this world where now people go on apps. I like to warn about the apps, because they are a third player in the relationship that does not necessarily have an incentive to create a relationship and make it sustainable and long term, because they lose a customer. Alex's model, as also I understand a matchmaker, is very different, and it has worked for in different forms for a decade. But normally when people come and ask for advice, I send them to dating coaches and matchmakers who really have the strong couple at heart, and whose incentive is to really create the relationship.
Yeah, we've got to end our show. Thank you so much to our guests. Rebecca Grun von Jolk is an expert in economics and the data behind romantic relationships. Alex Merritt is a Minneapolis-based dating coach known as the Love Engineer. This conversation was produced by Aaron Wodeslassie.
Support for tonight's program comes from Alight and Northwest Minnesota Foundation, helping create a trusted space where Minnesotans can come together, engage with one another, and better understand the issues shaping our communities. We're grateful for their support of thoughtful civic dialogue and connection. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Every day, your classical NPR gives you a wellness break with music that brings healing, balance, and beauty. Make a place for space and grace in your day. Your classical NPR, bringing music to life.
You're listening to NPR News 91.1 KNOW, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Stream us at nprnews.org. It's cloudy, 37 degrees in the Twin Cities right now. It's going to remain cloudy throughout the evening with lows in the mid-20s. Thursday, mostly cloudy. There's a 50% chance of rain and snow in the afternoon, and a high wind watch is in effect from late Thursday night through Friday morning. Now on Friday, windy, mostly sunny, highs in the upper 30s. And then Friday night, those clouds are going to come back, lows in the mid-20s. And Saturday, mostly cloudy again, a 30% chance of snow in the afternoon with highs in the upper 30s. Saturday night, that snow is very likely, chance of snow 70%.